Emily sat on the porch swing, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had already grown cold. The late afternoon sun dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of gold and orange, while crisp autumn leaves floated across the quiet street. The neighborhood was peaceful, and life had become steady, predictable, almost too ordinary. For years, Emily had lived in this rhythm. Morning routines with her husband Mark, dinners at the same table, weekends spent running errands or meeting close friends. It was a life many would call comfortable, even ideal. And yet, beneath her calm smile, Emily sometimes felt a restlessness she couldn't quite name. That evening, Mark came home later than usual. His shoes crunched against the gravel driveway, and when he stepped inside, he carried an unusual energy. Emily looked up from the kitchen counter where she was chopping vegetables. His eyes held a spark she hadn't seen in a while. "Emily," he began, setting down his briefcase. "You'll never guess who I heard from today." She tilted her head, curious. "Who?" Mark smiled, almost hesitant. "Daniel, my brother. He's coming back." The knife in Emily's hand paused mid-air. The name hung between them, like a ghost suddenly brought back to life. Daniel. It had been nearly 10 years since she last saw him, back when he was still the free-spirited younger brother, who never seemed to stay in one place. He had left town chasing dreams, chasing freedom, chasing something he never explained. His absence became permanent, and after a few years, even the holiday calls had stopped. Emily hadn't thought about him in so long. But now the memory of Daniel, his sharp wit, his warm laughter, the way he carried himself with restless energy, rushed back to her. Her heart skipped a beat, though she quickly masked it with a calm nod. "That's surprising," she said softly. Mark continued, unaware of her inner shift. "He said he's tired of drifting, wants to come home for a while, maybe figure out what's next. I told him he could stay with us until he settles in." Emily forced a smile, though her stomach turned with an unfamiliar knot. The thought of Daniel living under their roof was both unsettling and strangely stirring. She hadn't realized until now how deeply his memory had stayed with her, quietly waiting. The next evening, the knock on their door came just as the sun had set. Emily opened it, and there he was. Daniel, older, broader in the shoulders, his once boyish grin now lined with years of experience. Yet his eyes, still bright and searching, carried the same magnetic energy she remembered. "Emily," he said with an easy smile. "It's been too long." She stood frozen for a moment before finding her voice. "Daniel, welcome home." Mark appeared behind her, clapping his brother on the back with genuine joy. "Look at you, man. You haven't changed as much as I thought." Daniel laughed. "Trust me, I've changed plenty." They carried his bags inside, and Emily busied herself preparing dinner, though her hands trembled slightly as she set the table. From the kitchen, she heard the brothers' voices, rising and falling with excitement, filling the house with a liveliness it hadn't known in years. She caught herself smiling at the sound, though she couldn't ignore the way her pulse raced every time Daniel's voice echoed through the room. At dinner, Daniel shared stories of his travels, cities where he had lived for months, jobs he had taken on a whim, relationships that had started and ended before they could take root. He spoke with honesty, a mixture of pride and regret, and Emily found herself listening more closely than she intended. His words painted pictures of places she had only dreamed of, lives she had never lived. Mark was fascinated, leaning forward with questions, but Emily noticed how Daniel's eyes sometimes flickered toward her, as if gauging her reaction. She kept her expression calm, though inside a storm was stirring. After dinner, when Mark excused himself to take a phone call for work, Emily and Daniel were left alone at the table. The silence stretched between them, heavy yet alive. "You've built a beautiful home," Daniel said finally, his voice softer now. Emily nodded. "Mark worked hard for this. We're settled." There was a pause. Then Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying her. "And you? Are you happy, Emily?" The question startled her. It was too direct, too personal, the kind of question people rarely asked anymore. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. She thought of her life, the stability, the routine, the safety. It was enough. It should have been enough. But in that quiet kitchen, with Daniel's gaze holding hers, she realized she didn't have a simple answer. She smiled faintly to cover the unease. "Happiness looks different for everyone, I guess." Daniel didn't press further. He only nodded, but the look in his eyes told her he understood more than she had said. Later that night, as Emily lay in bed beside Mark, listening to his steady breathing, she couldn't silence the thoughts racing through her mind. Daniel's sudden return had awakened something within her, something she had long ago buried under the layers of daily life. She had told herself she was content, that her quiet routine was enough. But now, with Daniel back under their roof, she wondered if the life she had chosen was truly the life her heart still longed for. The sound of the wind outside rattled the window pane, and Emily closed her eyes, trying to push the feelings away. But deep down, she knew the truth. Daniel's return had changed everything, and though she didn't yet know what it meant, she sensed that the days ahead would test her in ways she never expected. The days after Daniel's arrival seemed to change the air in the house. Emily noticed it immediately. The laughter at the dinner table, the way the house felt less quiet, more alive. Mark was glad to have his brother back, but his demanding job often pulled him away. That left Emily and Daniel sharing spaces, moments, and conversations that felt strangely natural, as if no time had passed since he left. One morning, Emily found Daniel in the kitchen, pouring coffee while humming to himself. She had forgotten how easy his presence was, how he could fill a room without even trying. He looked up and smiled. "I didn't know if you still liked it black," he said, sliding a cup toward her. She raised a brow. "You remembered?" Daniel chuckled. "Some things stick." Emily took the cup, her fingers brushing against his briefly. The touch was nothing, accidental, but it left her pulse racing faster than she wanted to admit. She turned away quickly, sipping the coffee to hide her reaction. Later that day, Daniel asked if she'd like to walk with him to the park nearby. Mark was at the office, buried in deadlines, so Emily agreed. The air was crisp, the trees shedding golden leaves onto the sidewalks. Children played on swings, their laughter floating through the air while joggers passed by with headphones on. It was an ordinary scene, yet Emily felt unusually alive, walking beside Daniel. "You've changed, Emily," Daniel said suddenly. She glanced at him. "Changed how?" "You're calmer," he said thoughtfully. "Stronger too, but quieter, like you've built walls around yourself." His words struck her. She had heard compliments before, but no one had spoken to her like that in years. No one had noticed her silence. She laughed softly, trying to brush it off. "Life makes you quieter, I suppose." Daniel gave her a look, steady and searching. "Or maybe life made you forget the parts of yourself you once loved." Emily didn't answer. His words lingered, echoing in her chest as they continued their walk in silence. That evening, the three of them ate dinner together, but Emily couldn't stop thinking about what Daniel had said. She caught him looking at her once or twice, and though neither spoke of it, something unspoken passed between them. Over the following days, small moments began to pile up. Daniel helped her in the kitchen, chopping vegetables clumsily while joking about his lack of cooking skills. She found herself laughing more than she had in years. He carried groceries with ease, fixed a broken chair, and even played guitar on the porch one evening. His music carrying softly into the night, Emily sat quietly listening, her heart stirred by emotions she didn't want to name. She admired Mark deeply. He was reliable, hardworking, steady. But Daniel brought something else into her world: spontaneity, lightness. the reminder of a life she once dreamed about but had let go of. One night, after Mark had gone upstairs to answer emails, Daniel and Emily sat on the porch. The air was cool, stars scattered across the sky. Daniel handed her a mug of warm tea, and they sat in silence for a while before he spoke. "Do you ever wonder how life could have been different?" he asked quietly. Emily froze. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, his gaze fixed on the night sky. "Different choices, different paths. Sometimes I wonder what I missed, or what I left behind." She stared into her cup, her hands tightening around it. His words carried weight, and though he didn't say more, she felt the layers hidden underneath. The thought unsettled her, yet it also lit something inside her. Before she could respond, Mark's voice called from upstairs, breaking the moment. Emily quickly stood, her heart pounding. "I should go," she said softly. The next day, Emily tried to distract herself with errands, chores, and reading, but she couldn't shake Daniel's question from her mind. What would life have been like if choices had been different? The thought scared her, because deep down, she had sometimes wondered the same. When she returned home, Daniel was in the backyard, repairing the old wooden fence. Sweat clung to his forehead, his shirt rolled up at the sleeves. He looked up when she approached, smiling as if nothing weighed on him. "This fence was falling apart. Figured I'd fix it before the who." Rain hammered softly against the windows, the grey afternoon wrapping the house in a hush. Emily stood by the sink, drying plates, while Daniel lingered near the living room window, staring out at the storm. His figure was framed by the pale light, tall and thoughtful, his presence both familiar and unsettling. She placed the last dish on the rack, wiped her hands, and walked toward him. "You've been quiet all day," she said gently. Daniel turned, his expression serious. "I've been thinking." "About what?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. His gaze held hers for a moment before he spoke. "About the past, about choices, about how life might have turned out if I hadn't left." Emily's breath caught. She tried to keep her tone even. "You can't change the past." "No," he agreed, his voice low. "But sometimes I wonder what I lost. And sometimes," he hesitated, his words hanging heavy in the room, "sometimes I wonder what you lost too." Her heart thudded painfully. The implication was clear, yet unspoken. She wanted to stop him, to steer the conversation away, but she couldn't. His words reached the part of her heart she had tried to bury. "Daniel," she whispered, "you shouldn't say things like that." "I know," he said, his jaw tightening, "but I can't help it." The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of rain against the glass. Emily wanted to move, to leave, but her feet felt rooted to the floor. 1,000 unspoken thoughts swirled in her chest. She loved Mark. He was her husband, steady and kind. But Daniel's presence had stirred feelings she didn't know she still had the capacity to feel. Before she could respond, Mark's voice echoed from upstairs. "Emily, where's my blue folder?" The moment shattered like glass. Emily stepped back quickly, her voice trembling. "I'll go help him." She hurried upstairs, her heart racing, grateful for the interruption, yet shaken by how close the air between her and Daniel had become. The days after that conversation were filled with tension. Emily avoided being alone with Daniel, but it wasn't always possible. Sometimes she'd find him in the kitchen, late at night, pouring a glass of water. Other times, he'd step into the garden when she was there. Each time, there was a weight between them, an invisible current pulling at her. Mark, busy as always, seemed oblivious. He was grateful for Daniel's help around the house, grateful for the company. At dinner, he laughed with his brother, unaware of the quiet storm building beside him. Emily smiled, said the right things, but beneath the surface, her thoughts tangled. One evening, while Mark worked late at the office, Emily sat on the couch reading. Daniel entered, carrying a mug of tea. "You've been reading that same page for 10 minutes. he said softly, setting the mug down beside her. She closed the book, flustered. "I'm distracted. By me?" he asked, his tone gentle but direct. Emily froze. He had stripped away the pretense, leaving her with no safe place to hide. "Daniel," she began, but her voice faltered. He sat down across from her, his eyes steady. "I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt Mark. But I can't deny what I feel." Her chest tightened. "You shouldn't say this." "I know," he said again, the same tortured honesty as before. "But if I keep it inside, it'll consume me." She stood quickly, needing space, needing air. "This can't happen. Whatever you think you feel, it's wrong." Daniel rose too, his voice urgent. "Is it wrong if it's real?" The words shook her, but before she could respond, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway cut through the moment. Mark was home. Relief and panic washed over her at the same time. She turned toward the kitchen, forcing her breathing to steady. When Mark stepped through the door, cheerful and tired, Emily greeted him with a smile that felt too practiced. Daniel slipped back into his role as younger brother, hiding the weight of the conversation beneath casual jokes. But Emily couldn't forget. That night, lying in bed, Emily stared at the ceiling while Mark slept soundly beside her. Her mind replayed Daniel's words again and again. "Is it wrong if it's real?" She hated the way her heart answered before her reason could stop it. She hated the longing that threatened to undo everything she had built with Mark. The storm outside had passed, but inside her, the storm was only beginning. The following afternoon, Emily tried to regain control. She decided to spend time outside, trimming the rose bushes in the garden. The simple task grounded her, reminding her of the life she had chosen, the stability, the home, the years of love with Mark. But when she turned, Daniel was there again, leaning against the fence he had fixed days before. His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. "I didn't mean to make things harder for you." Emily's hands stilled on the shears. "You did. I know," he said. "But the truth has a way of slipping out, even when you don't want it to." She sighed, shaking her head. "The truth doesn't change what's right." Daniel stepped closer, his expression pained. "Maybe not, but it doesn't erase what's in here." He tapped his chest. "I feel it, Emily, and I think you do too." Her throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to put an end to the tension once and for all. But the words stuck in her throat, because deep down, he was right. She did feel it, and that truth terrified her. "Daniel," she said finally, her voice trembling, "don't make me choose between honesty and loyalty." "Because I will always choose loyalty." His eyes softened, filled with a sadness she couldn't bear to see. He nodded slowly, stepping back. "I understand." But as he walked away, Emily knew the unspoken words between them were not gone. They lingered, heavy in the air, alive in her chest. That evening, the three of them shared dinner again, laughter filling the room as if nothing had changed. Mark was cheerful, unaware of the shadows beneath the smiles. Emily spoke when needed, laughed when expected, but her heart felt split. Daniel kept his distance, but when their eyes met briefly across the table, the truth pulsed between them like a secret flame. When Emily went to bed that night, she realized there was no escaping it. The line had been crossed, not with touch, but with words, with feelings, with truths that could no longer be ignored. The house felt the same, but she knew it wasn't. Something had shifted forever, and sooner or later, choices would have to be made. The night of the family dinner arrived with the kind of nervous energy Emily couldn't shake. She had spent the afternoon setting the table, arranging flowers, and preparing dishes, all while trying to ignore the heavy thoughts swirling inside her. Mark was cheerful, excited to have his brother home and to share a meal together. Daniel moved around the kitchen with ease, carrying plates, his presence as steady as ever. To anyone looking in from the outside, it was a normal evening, but inside Emily's heart, Nothing felt normal anymore. Friends had joined them that night, filling the house with laughter and conversation. The living room buzzed with energy, glasses clinking, voices overlapping. Emily smiled, hosted, laughed at the right moments, but underneath her calm exterior, she was unraveling. Every time Daniel's eyes met hers, even briefly, she felt the weight of all that had been left unsaid. When the guests finally left, silence fell over the house. Mark yawned, stretched, and kissed her cheek. "I'm exhausted. You two handle the dishes. I'm heading to bed." His voice was warm, trusting, unaware of the storm between them. Emily nodded, her throat dry. She and Daniel began clearing the table, moving in silence. The clatter of plates and the rush of water from the sink filled the air. Finally, Daniel set a glass down and turned to her. "Emily," he said softly, his voice trembling. "I need to say this before I lose the chance. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt Mark. But I can't pretend I don't feel something for you." Her chest tightened. She had feared these words, yet expected them. She set the dish towel aside, her hands trembling. "Daniel, please don't—" "I have to," he interrupted, his tone raw. "These weeks here, being around you, it's made me realize what I've been searching for all these years. It wasn't places of freedom. It was connection. And I feel that with you." Emily's heart pounded, torn between the honesty of his words and the life she had chosen. She looked into his eyes, and for a moment, she saw the possibility of another life, the life she once dreamed about, full of passion and unpredictability. But she also thought of Mark, loyal, steady, devoted Mark, who trusted her completely. She swallowed hard. "Daniel, this can't happen. What you feel, what I feel, it doesn't matter. Love isn't just about sparks. It's about choosing someone, building a life with them, standing by them when the feelings come and go." Daniel's jaw clenched, his eyes full of conflict. "So you're choosing safety over passion?" Emily shook her head, her voice breaking. "I'm choosing loyalty. I'm choosing the man who's been by my side every day, who built this home with me. That matters more than anything." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was thick, filled with all the words they couldn't say. Finally, Daniel nodded slowly, pain written across his face. "I understand. I won't push you anymore. But I want you to know, I'll carry this with me, always." Emily's eyes stung with unshed tears. "And I'll carry it too. But some feelings aren't meant to change the path we're on." Daniel exhaled, heavy and resigned. "Then I'll respect your choice." He picked up the last plate, dried it, and set it down. Then he turned and walked upstairs, his footsteps quiet but final. Emily stood alone in the kitchen, her chest aching, her hands trembling. Later, she slipped into bed beside Mark. He stirred, half asleep, and reached for her hand without opening his eyes.